I've thought about what I want to say when it comes to like the deep, personal meaning of this song. And it's like, I don't want to just rehash the past or talk about stuff I've already talked about, but it's kind of impossible at this point. And, frankly, I don't think there's enough people really paying attention to this that it really matters that much. So I try not to, beat a dead horse, I guess. But, oh well. The ending breakdown, that whole section, basically from the anchor, saying, viewer discretion advised through the end of the song, is what I wanted to really make this song really about. Because like I said, 80-90% of it up till that point is just telling the story and, these, rhetorical questions when it comes to peace and revolution and whatnot. But this song, the ending of it is about the moment that I found out that the, woman that I wanted to marry, had married somebody else, which, basically, the real life Aurora character had gotten married, and the moment that I found that out. I know in the off chance that she or one of our like mutual friends is watching this, I guess I understand that they could pretty much be offended that I compare this metaphorically or whatever, her getting married to her like dying. Maybe they wouldn't find that fair, but something died that day. I had already been estranged from her altogether and her family too at that point for, like 9 months without really any explanation. Nothing really said. It was just they ghosted me. And as I've said before, that's their right. It's her right, her choice, her life to, marry whoever she wants to. So that really isn't a debate. Was it up to her? Did she have some moral imperative to take any of my feelings into consideration? Probably not. But I mean, I can say this now with hindsight and recognize that what this section, this breakdown, and this death of Aurora does is it sets up the next couple of songs. So really what I'm saying here applies as much to the next two songs as it does to this, even though the next two songs, the personal meaning gets away from her and into like other aspects But I guess what I'm trying to say, what I'm setting up here, and I'm pretty sure I've said this before too, but once again, I'm at the place in my life where I can talk about this unemotionally and recognizing that the people who were, I guess, indirectly involved, who like mutual friends basically, or yeah, mutual friends, mutual people who knew both of us, like none of them are in my life anymore. So like even if they get offended, so what? Like I'm not like sorry, not sorry. Like everybody's moved on with their lives, and it's not because of this one situation or anything. It's a lot of other things actually. But point being, like, it doesn't really bother me if anybody's offended by this song or any of that, any of what I'm about to say. I was the last person to know, I guess. I had seen the woman I wanted to marry basically kept like the same profile picture on Facebook for a few years or whatever to that point, and then a couple of months before she got married, she changed it. And it was a picture with her and some guy who ended up being the guy she married. So from that alone, I just kind of assumed, okay, she's in a relationship, got a boyfriend, whatever. But I know that this, let's call it a tribe that I was a part of, that pretty much everybody there knew her as well, even though she wasn't a part of that particular tribe. I mean, all my mutual friends, or at the least mutual acquaintances, like I recognize now that everybody had to have known except for me. At the time, I wanted to give most of them the benefit of the doubt, and even then, like, try to understand that maybe they didn't want to tell me because they didn't figure it was their place to, or rather they were afraid of how I would react if I would try to crash the wedding or something like that, which I guess I can understand that standpoint. But at the same time, it's real shitty. I found out because I went down, spent the weekend with my brother at his place out of town, and had this amazing Saturday morning and afternoon. Got back to his house after dinner, like an early dinner. Sit down, watch Stranger Things. I check Facebook and see, like one of her family members post something about like getting ready for a wedding or whatever, and I recognized that it was in her parents' backyard sort of thing, and I went, to her profile and saw that somebody had just like mere 10 minutes before that posted pictures of from the wedding ceremony, and that's how I found out. I knew after that a month and a half before that wedding, some of our mutual friends were basically talking about the potential wedding right in front of me to our group. You know, they didn't say anything about a wedding or a ceremony. All they said was, "Oh yeah, tomorrow, you know, I've got plans. I've got to get together with her and, you know, do the thing we're going to do or whatever." And it seemed like most people kind of knew what was going on, and, you know, I had no clue. Only that, like, they were friends with, like, a couple of them were still friends with her, and, you know, the rest of them, not really, you know, they weren't prevalent in her life or her and theirs. But the only point that I'm making is that, you know, my friends knew, and these were people that, you know, were really important to me, and nobody said anything. I mean, even after I found out, and, you know, eventually, you know, in my own way, you know, wished her good luck or whatever, like the next day, you know, nobody reached out to me, nobody said anything about it. And like I said, I at the time gave people the benefit of the doubt, but since none of those people are in my life anymore, and it's been, gosh, 4 years or whatever at this point, that's just a really shitty thing to call somebody a friend and then just leave them in the dark like that. Because no matter what, like, anybody thinks of my decision to, like, wait for her or whatever, whether they think I'm awesome or whether they think that, you know, I was a complete fool and an idiot, like, it was a decision that came to define me, and in one single instant it all imploded on itself. And, you know, it was a weight off my shoulders. I knew that that particular story had to end at some point, and that, like, it was overdue. I would rather it happen that way than just wait 4 years and then the same thing happens. Like, that would have been a waste of my time, and probably even more devastating, just simply because of the time and the anxiety and everything spent. But even still, I mean, I part of me doesn't even want to say this, but I have to recognize that that was, for me personally, kind of a traumatic moment. I have not been the same ever since. Like, you know, this, I guess, me opening up or whatever, but, you know, right after I found out, like, the next day, you know, I noticed someone in a circle where I'm a part of, seemingly appeared to be, like, checking me out or something, which made me, you know, it was a young woman that I had noticed, you know, before, you know, a couple of months before that, realized that, you know, there were some significant gaps between us that, you know, I don't want to go into, you know, because of plausible deniability. But, you know, going into right before the pandemic, you know, my plan was I wanted to figure out how to, like, pursue this young woman because I found her very attractive and all. And just the idea that maybe she was checking me out, it was like, well, you know, who knows? But because of the pandemic, because of everything like I wasn't, I was only going to make calculated risks. And I feel like I've done that ever since then. Because it's like you recognize, like, I don't want to go through any of that again. I don't want to be bamboozled, you know. And that lack of actively doing anything, you know, I watched this young woman, you know, get in, you know, different relationships at the time. And eventually that young woman ended up getting married. You know, like, first relationship, you know, it was like instant panic, anxiety, whatever, like, oh crap, what happens? That eventually ended. Another relationship, I'm now really annoyed, but it's not up to me. Third relationship, whatever happens, so forth, and it's just like over and over it happens, but you just grow more and more kind of cynical, I guess is the word. I mean, not exactly, but it's, you just feel not in control, but at the same time it just sort of matters less and less until one day you're sitting on the beach with your brother and you find out this young woman gets engaged, and you just laugh about it almost. Like, that's how it was for me. I found out this young woman, after the, you know, woman I wanted to marry got married, you know, a couple of years later, sitting on the beach, like, during the pandemic, and oh, she's engaged now. Whatever. Whatever. Knew the day that, you know, this young woman was getting married, and it was just like, whatever. Who cares? And so I guess it becomes this like precedence of like traumatic response or whatever. I don't know how to explain it, but it changes you in the head. And you realize, I realized, sorry for talking in third person or whatever, but I realized that these people who, well, one of the people of this tribe, you know, like the first person and really the only person of all of them that I really talked to in depth about it, well, definitely the first person, but I think there were two people that I talked to in the tribe, and the rest of them never really said anything, and neither did they. But, you know, the first person, it was like the very next day I talked to this person in person, and they said to me that, I mean, they were kind of legitimately angry in the moment when I said, you know, she got married yesterday, and this person couldn't believe it. Maybe they already knew, maybe they didn't, I don't know. But either way, I guess they had assumed that I knew about it already. And the fact that I was bamboozled, I guess, my guess is that it made them angry. And so they told me, you know, eye to eye, you know, that I deserved better. And all this time later, it's like, maybe that's actually true, but not just from like this woman I wanted to marry, but also from like our mutual friends. Maybe I actually did deserve better than to be kept in the dark like that, and then just find out completely bamboozled, and it causes this kind of traumatic experience of sorts. That something that defined you, whether that was right or wrong, I made the choice. Like, it came to define me. It is what it is. And then it's just punch right to the crotch, and, you know, so that's why I liken it to a death, because the second that I saw her in her wedding dress and with her new husband, you know, reality set in that, like, we're probably not going to be friends anymore, at least in this life, you know. I hope for peace. I hope for redemption and all that stuff, but at the same time, just being realistic here, like, I mean, when I was like working on this song, I went out to eat early one afternoon, you know, a few months ago, and I saw the woman I wanted to marry walk into this restaurant that I was pretty much going to go into and get food. I had this moment where I was like, do I really want to go up there, or do I just want to run away? And, you know, I decided, well, I'm going to risk potential conflict, potential confrontation or whatever. Like, I'm not seeking that out, but at the same time, like, I can't run away and be a coward. So I walked into the restaurant knowing that she was in there, had just gotten there a couple of minutes before I did, by, you know, complete happenstance. And, you know, I sat there, ate. She was with some other people I knew of, and pretty sure she saw me there. We didn't acknowledge one another. We didn't speak. You know, kept our distance and all. But, you know, it was the first time she and I had been in the same room in like 4.5 years, and it was, you know, it was a weird experience to be sitting there knowing that this woman you wanted to marry was just like on the other side of basically a glass partition, and kind of like a number of feet away in the corner, you know. Is what it is, but I don't know what else to say to that. It's just like, just even friendship just seemed dead at that point. And so, like, that ending breakdown, I really wanted to have the tone of that, like, initial shock and that initial panic and anxiety and whatever you want to call it, that just the traumatic experience in general of having to deal with that and recognizing right away that something is dead, and that, like, nothing's going to be the same after that, like, not just outward, like, with other people, but also, like, within you, within yourself, that nothing's going to be quite the same again. And that, like I said, I don't want to, like, part of me doesn't want to call it a trauma, because, you know, I know there's people potentially listening to this have been through much, 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 much worse. And even things that I've dealt with in the past may be much, much, much worse. But for me in that moment, like, I was completely bamboozled, and I'd been through this situation before, but I always had a heads up and knew that it was coming. But this time I didn't at all. And it really wasn't fair to me. Like, I do deserve better than that. But at the same time, it just kind of is what it is, and you learn to move on from it, but I don't know what else to add to that. It sucks either way. So, I mean, that's pretty much the personal meaning of the song, and I guess adds to why this song means so much to me, and, you know, hopefully that translates and you like it as well. But till tomorrow, you know, keep some of that in mind, because there is some carryover, even though, like, the next few songs really have nothing to do with her at all. In fact, it's dead at this point, so, like, I don't want to write anything more. I don't want to even mention her anymore. It's a dead situation. But like I'm trying to say here, like, that traumatic event, you know, it sets up what's to come. This song sets up the end of something. It's this traumatic experience that leads to the ending of this volume. And so it's not like the penultimate chapter by any means, but it is where things completely turn. So until tomorrow.